Welcome to Our Issues Birmingham. Today's guest is Lance Taylor with WJOX in the Round Table. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Tommy. Been a while. At least been a while since I've seen your face.
Yeah.
Talked to you times. I like the Masterpiece Theater backdrop there. Is that a cello?
That is an upright bass.
Okay.
It's a big bass, and I don't play it. So it makes for a nice corner in what we call our music room here. So
yeah, fair enough. And I apologize for my lack of knowledge on the instruments, but very impressive.
I hear you're outside right now, and I'm hearing the buzzing of various insects. So this is a very natural dialogue we're about to have.
I'm one with nature now since COVID hit. So I try to spend as much time outside as possible.
So they moved your show. You're now taping you're live from 6 to 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. It's actually been 2+ years now. So we started in March of 2018. So yeah, we're on, 20 months now of getting up at, then 3:45 in the morning. But now I get to sleep into a good 4:15 because I'm doing it from the house now.
Oh, man. So that fits your lifestyle perfectly, I trust.
Yeah, I get to get in bed at 8:30 at night, Tommy. It's really exciting. I shouldn't say unfortunately. I'm still doing a couple of different things at night as far as like nighttime gigs. Yeah, I'm out on a Wednesday and Thursday night. So some of these nights I'm out till 10 o'clock at night, and then getting in bed at 10:30 or 11 and getting my 4 hours of sleep is not good. But hey, we battle through.
And we couldn't have your partners with us today because we weren't set up for it. But I trust you're still working with Ryan and Jim.
Yep, Ryan Brown, Jim Dunaway. We are on past year 10 now. So,
wow.
Round Table. Rocking and rolling for more than a decade, Tommy.
Well, how do you operate a sports talk show when there are no sports up until recently?
During COVID, maybe the second most asked question to me was that exact question. The first being, are we going to have college football this fall? The good news is there are 3 voices and a fourth when we include our producer, Sean Henniger, rock star that you know well. And we've got a really, really good chemistry, and we talk about weird things. And, college football is 70, 80% of our conversation. But the good news is that time of year, typically in the spring, we're building for a college football season and projecting what's going to happen. So we just did our normal show. We would touch a little Major League Baseball, a little NBA. But that's not really a big ingredient in the Jocks Round Table. So we were fortunate to continue to do what we've always done. And now we did kind of say if we roll into August and September and there's no college football, things could get really difficult. But fortunately now, at least, a few conferences, 76 teams have decided to play college football up until this moment.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned 76 teams, and I was going to save this for later, but we have 80 bowl slots available at the end of each season, assuming we have 76 teams finish the season. So what's going to happen there? We're going to do away with some bowls, perhaps?
I think they're going to do away with a lot of bowls, Tommy. I don't think a lot of these bowls are money makers to begin with. Obviously, the television contracts is what drives these bowls, but you're not more than likely going to be able to have any attendance. There's going to be a situation where you're going to get 3 and 4 win teams that you would have to put in these bowl games. So my opinion, at least right now, as we roll into September, is you're just going to have the college football playoffs and maybe some of the bigger bowls outside of that. But I think it would be less than 10 bowl games that we will have.
Well, we're satisfied the Pac-12 is gone, right?
The Pac-12 is gone, unfortunately, yes.
And why do I think the Big Ten is off again, on again? And off again.
Well, I wish they were. The Pac-12 kind of followed what the Big Ten was doing. And the Big Ten, at least there's been some activity there. Pac-12 is just flatlined. And it seems like they're totally content until waiting until 2021. Big Ten has just had some of their bigger institutions, like Nebraska and Ohio State, kind of pushing and wanting to know what really happened. And, there was a lawsuit that was filed by 8 Nebraska players that wanted some transparency in how this vote went down with the 14 institutions. And then it finally came public on August 31st that it was voted against 11-3 by the university presidents in the Big Ten to not play football this year and to postpone all fall sports. So I think when you look at that, I think realistically we are not going to see Big Ten football this year, unfortunately.
So, of course, the SEC would be the next big conference that would have fan interest, I suppose. I don't know of any other conference that might drive it. Do you?
No, I think the SEC is obviously the top model going. I mean, they're the top model to begin with, and then the Big Ten would be behind that. I mean, the fortunate thing for the SEC is they do have drafting partners in the Big 12 and the ACC that want to play football. And then when you have kind of a charter member in Notre Dame getting fully involved with the ACC this year for their 11-game schedule, I think that really helps that conference.
I personally like the SEC schedules, playing SEC teams and eliminating some of the softball teams that have been on the schedule in the past. That's just me personally.
No, I agree with you, Tommy. Unfortunately, we're not going to get a game like USC and Alabama, which we would have seen the first weekend of September. We're not going to get, Auburn and North Carolina. I mean, there were some really cool matchups, but when you look at a 10-game conference schedule, something we've never seen before, and you look at a team like Arkansas, who's lost 19 consecutive SEC games, they're going to be playing 7 top 25 teams. So this schedule is going to be brutal. It's going to be really difficult for anybody to be able to run the table. I know you're an Auburn Tiger fan, and when you look at their schedule, I mean, I think 7-3 would be a really good season for the Auburn Tigers based on who they're playing.
Well, this could be the year of the hog, Lance. We're going to take a break. Don't leave me. We'll be right back, and we'll talk about some more SEC football when we return. This is Our Issues Birmingham. Don't go away. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. I'm Tommy Spina. I'm talking to Lance Taylor with WJOX, a sports enthusiast and guru. We talked about the upcoming season. What I'd like to talk just briefly about is we had recently a show of support by the University of Alabama football team, and I'm assuming other sports franchises, regarding what's going on in our country with the Black Lives Matter movement and other things related there too. Do you think those things are going to have an impact on the season going forward?
It's an interesting question. And, I had the conversation the other day. You look at these 19 and 20-year-olds, and, I go back when I was in college, it was just enough for me to get out of bed and actually go and try to study and try to stay in school. And now you've got Black Lives Matter. You've got social injustice all over the place. You've got COVID-related issues. These kids have got to go to class. They're playing football. It's so much on their plate. But, yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere right now. And you got to respect these student athletes that are able to balance all of this.
Speaking of the COVID issue, what is the protocol that's going down as we speak with the players? Are they being tested 3 times a week?
Yeah, I think right now it's either 2 or 3 times a week, Tommy. I apologize for not knowing that exact number. I think it is going to change once we actually get into season. And I think the protocol is different for some. I thought it was interesting when Auburn had their outbreak, when they kind of shut down practice for a little bit, and there was 19 COVID situations. And for the Auburn Tigers, it's a 17-day quarantine, which is going to be really interesting once we get into the season, because that could affect 3 weeks of a 10-game season. And so I don't know how you're really going to make this thing work week to week if you have a couple of outbreaks here and there, because with the games being pushed back to September 26th, you've only got a couple of weeks where you're not playing games and you're able to make those games up. So I think this is going to be really interesting going forward. And I just always wondered if guys were asymptomatic, if they continue to play, or if you did test positive, if you just move those guys out and you keep everybody else play.
What happens if you run into a situation where a team is not able to field a team because of COVID? Then what? Games get canceled?
That's going to be a problem. I mean, you look at your defending national champion LSU Tigers, 15-0 last year. This is a team at one point over the last couple of weeks, they couldn't field an offensive line. I mean, that was one of their unit groups, because a lot of these teams are practicing in units, trying to keep the social distancing aspect, and almost their entire offensive line went down. And if that happens in the regular season, there's just no way you're going to be able to play. If you lose all your quarterbacks all your offensive linemen, it's going to be impossible.
And then what happens to the BCS? There's a question.
Yeah, well, I don't think right now all 76 teams playing are going to be playing the same amount of games. And I guess it's just going to be an eyeball test. And, if let's just say hypothetically Clemson, for whatever reason, they have major breakouts and they can only play 9 games, and Georgia plays 8 games, and Georgia's sitting at 7-1 and Clemson's 8-1. And then you throw in an Alabama that's 8-2. I guess the committee's just got to look at this, weigh all factors, and try to figure it out. It seems like on one front it might be a little easier to pare down from 76 to 4 teams. But at the same time, with all of the situations that could arise here, it could be much more difficult.
Well, in addition to what you just said, we've also got a Heisman Trophy issue out there as well.
We do. And, unfortunately, Tommy, there's going to be an asterisk with everything involved in this entire season. And I just think 2020 in general. But, yeah, when you've got a lot less players, it's going to be easier for somebody to win a Heisman Trophy. And, look, for whoever wins that award, they're obviously going to be deserving. And, I don't think anything should really be, marked beside it that it's not as important as some of these other years when the award was won. But it is going to be a lot different.
Yeah. I agree. And I can't help but ask the question, why are we doing this? I mean,
why are we playing football?
I mean, we've got a pandemic going on. People are dying. We're approaching 200,000 deaths, but yet we have to play football to stadiums that are 20% full to capacity.
Yeah,
Am I wrong?
I'm one of these that I truly believe I can't really rely on a vaccine. I haven't seen a vaccine yet. There's a chance that we never have a vaccine. I know how important football is to my livelihood. So selfishly, I look at it from that standpoint. I look around at local business owners that I know that will actually go out of business if there is no football. I know what it means to these players. And and when you look at that demographic, the 18 to 22, yeah, they're at risk to contract COVID. But as far as if they don't have any underlying health issues, these guys are going to be fine. These are world-class athletes that I think will be totally fine. And again, maybe I'm being somewhat naive by saying this, and maybe I'm being selfish. But I'm one of those that truly believe we need to push through with the college football season.
Yeah, but there has been some editorials written regarding the social responsibility to those players' families when they go back home for the weekend. And are they exposing their grandparents to risk and things of that nature? And, we in the South, particularly, football is king. And we seem to be overlooking the fact that there's a real serious health concern out there that can affect lots of people.
I don't disagree.
See it too.
The only thing I would say, Tommy, is you've still got all these college students. And if the university presidents are going to allow 30,000 students back on campus where they can pocket that tuition money, these kids are still going to have house parties and they're still going to go to bars. And I think with your 85 to 110 athletes that are really in a different ecosystem than these other college students, because most of these guys are taking classes online, they're being tested every other day, and they're really being held responsible to being accountable for each and every one of their teammates. I think they're in a better situation than a regular student. And I think if there was no football, they would be more prone to going out and getting it like regular students are right now.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Our Issues Birmingham. Speaking with Lance Taylor about sports and football. So do you think we'll make it through an entire college season?
It's such an interesting question, Tommy, because we've already had,
that's my job.
Facts, but again, bringing up the Auburn Tigers with the 19 positive test and how they had to shut it down for a few days. If you start to see this type of stuff pop up, I just wonder how long it would be before somebody pulled the plug. I am going to try to be really optimistic here, and I am going to say that we make it through a college football season. I don't think it's going to be like anything we've seen before, and I think it will be not uniformed. I think some teams will play 8 games, some teams will play 10 games. So it's going to be a very different look. But I will say that we battle through and we make it through the season.
I hope you're right. It is something that I look forward to every Saturday afternoon, is sit down and watch college sports. To me, much more exciting than NFL sports. But let's talk about the NFL. What's going to go on there? The NBA created a pretty interesting setup that seems to have worked with their bubble. What about the NFL, and will there be a Super Bowl, and how will all that play out at the professional level?
Yeah, I think the NFL, there's just so much money involved. And, they obviously can't do what the NBA was able to do and have this bubble situation that they pulled off in Orlando. And at least, knock on wood, it has worked up until this point with no positive COVID test. I think the NFL, even if they had tests or if they had positive tests come back, I think they would find a way to work around this. Again, the billions and billions of dollars that are involved in this NFL Sunday ticket contract with DirecTV, it's just so massive. I mean, the NFL is doing it basically. Most organizations right now, most franchises are doing it in front of no fans. And I could see by the end of the season where you see what some of the colleges are doing with 20 to 30% of fans. But ultimately, yes, I think we will have a Super Bowl. It would take some kind of major setback in society for the NFL to call this thing off. And for whatever reason, if college football called it off, I think the NFL would take advantage of the college window. And what they would do is probably cherry pick 3 games, put those on Saturdays, probably play them in a noon, 3 o'clock, and a 7 o'clock window, just to give us some sort of football and to capitalize on, a television market that's out there that wouldn't have football if college did shut it down.
Well, that's a thought. That might work. But why couldn't they can't have a bubble? What distinguishes them from the NBA because of just simply the number of people involved?
Yeah, I think the number of people, on an NBA roster, you're talking 13 to 15 guys, and, NFL, we're talking 53 plus now. And I just think it would be, and then you talk about facilities, when you have one court, and the way the NBA was doing this was playing 4 or 5 games a day on 2 different courts. I don't know how you could really logistically pull this off with 32 NFL teams, in one city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be a problem. Well, it will be an interesting season for us to watch unfold. What I suggest we might do is come back maybe mid-season and revisit the issue with you after we've had a few games under our belt. It's just a thought, and see where we are. One thing we haven't touched upon, but a huge industry is born out of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, yeah.
They've got to be taking a tremendous hit.
Well, I've got a personal website where I give out plays, and, once everything shut down in mid-March, we went 90 days with no sports and nothing to legally or illegally, however you want to look at it, wager on. And if we're just looking at Las Vegas, they basically shut down all casinos. And so this is something they really need to get their economy ramped back up. And I know personally for me, I would hate to see any of this football go away because that costs me subscribers. But you're talking about billions and billions of dollars each and every month Las Vegas is losing on this thing. And, I go back to the first game of the year, which a couple of points on that. And I don't know if you got to watch any of it, Tommy, but we had a Central Arkansas Austin P game in primetime on ESPN. And personally talking to a bunch of different people, they all wagered on that game because it had been so long since they could wager on a football game. So there's that. And there's also the positive that came out of that game. Everybody involved in that game tested for COVID on Monday following the Saturday night game. All tests came back negative. So we did pull off one football game with all negative tests. So that's a good thing.
Isn't that too soon to test? I mean, in there, to me, that's like me flying somewhere and testing when I land where I'm going. I mean, shouldn't I wait a week or two?
A backstory on me. I was in a car with somebody a couple of weeks ago for 4 hours, and 4 days later, they tested positive for COVID. And I went 3 days after that and tested negative. And I was in the same car for 4 hours with the same circulation of air. So I don't know how this thing works.
Are they going to require masks of all the 20,000 people in the stands? I assume they will. And temperature checks?
They will. Can you imagine a nice, balmy September afternoon in Gainesville, Florida, wearing a mask for 4 hours? Doesn't seem like a lot of fun.
Gives new meaning to the word swamp.
That's very true.
So what other sports do you foresee going down the tube as a consequence of what's going on this year?
Well, I got really nervous with Rob Manfred and baseball taking so long to get on the same page and finally getting the season going. And then the Miami Marlins had this huge outbreak, and they were basically shut down for a couple of weeks. So a lot of people were nervous that Rob Manfred was just going to pull the plug and Major League Baseball was going to go away. It seems like they're kind of back dialed in, though. I think the way the NBA's got the bubble, I think they're fine. I think college basketball could have some issues. And the interesting point there is going to be, Tommy, the biggest moneymaker for the NCAA is March Madness. Obviously something we didn't have last March, but something they've got to have this year. Typically, college basketball starts at the end of November through December. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think we're going to see abbreviated college basketball seasons that will start in January.
Well, I hate to hear that coming because I've gotten really excited about Coach Kennedy and the UAB Blazers and hoping things turn around down there on the south side. Lance, thanks for being with us today. I appreciate your insight and your information. This is Our Issues Birmingham. We will see you next week.